Well, today is Trinity Sunday, which might not mean a lot outside of these walls, but it's part of the story that we follow, the story that brings us together. We fit a different calendar than you see on the one that you pick up and check off each day and each month. We start the year in Advent in the fall as we anticipate the arrival of a baby. This one birth that teaches us the communal truth that lies at the heart of the universe. The truth that we are not singular, that we are not solitary, in spite of the fact that we often feel alone and lonely. We do not and cannot live in seclusion. We are created out of community to be in community. And so each year we circle through our scriptures, we explore again how Christ reveals this open, vulnerable character of the Creator. So we read the words of love that Jesus spoke. We read of his frustration with injustice, his compassion, his acts of healing and kindness and inclusion. And through that we are able to say, so this is what God is like. And then Easter confirms that truth for us as Jesus chooses the sacrificial giving of his life instead of engaging in violent retribution or joining the forces of coercive power. He chooses to die for us. And then last week we celebrated the coming of the Holy Spirit with wind and fire into this weary world, transforming hearts and lives on Pentecost. So today we try to make sense of it all. We take a day to bring these three aspects of God together: the Creator, the Christ, the Holy Spirit. We contemplate the nature of God as Trinity. Now, just for the record, the word Trinity is not in the Bible. It doesn't appear in the scriptures or even in Christian writings before the end of the 2nd century. For about 150 years after Jesus' death, we didn't see this word. It's accredited to Tertullian in the 3rd century to take the concept we're trying to understand of Father, Son, and Spirit and call it Trinity. And so we do. And so it is still a confusing idea, and it is also a beautiful idea. We might say that the Trinity is the first community, the model of how we are called to connect with one another without prejudice, without inequality, without competition, always with perfect love. In this vision, the divine source of life, God, is experienced as Father. And this is different from previous conceptions of God or the gods who rule by fear, demanding loyalty, dominating with threat of destruction. This God asks to be known as a loving parent, guiding and protecting and teaching and forgiving and loving without reservation. That is how we know part of who God is. And then next, God is made known in a child born into our world. When we state our faith in Jesus Christ, God's Son, we make the claim that we know the mind and the character and the purpose of God as it is seen in the person of Jesus. Jesus was a human living life as we live it. He had to eat and drink and sleep and exercise and wash his face just as we do. And he suffered and he died and was laid to rest as a human being. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. God is experienced in the loveliness of nature and of music and of poetry and of science, but we only know part of God through those. We look to the self-giving love and life of Jesus Christ to know the Creator of all life. And then the Spirit dances into the world with wind and flame, keeping this wisdom going for all generations. As we read this morning, Proverbs speaks of divine wisdom as God's creative companion. This divine creativity embraces the whole of creation And Proverbs affirms the feminine creativity of God from the heart of divinity. She creates alongside this parent creator, bring order to the universe and delight to the creator. And God's wisdom established the way that things are, not blind chance or not the outcome of some primeval conflict, not from a detached God or worse, an evil one. Creation comes into existence born out of love and delight. Our scriptures are weaving together a love story, a story about the love that exists at the heart of God, flowing out into the world. The prayer we read this morning, Jesus invites us into this way of being in the world. He prays, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us. This unity that Jesus speaks of is for us, an extension of the unity that exists at the heart of the Creator. For as we try to understand this idea of Trinity, they are one being, and yet they experience relationship and community within this single identity. This is where we begin to see something of what it means to understand God as Holy Trinity. And it kind of messes with our understanding or our conceptions of God and divinity. For the supreme being of most monotheistic cultures was seen as one independent, violent patron of a nation or a religion, one who rules by instilling fear and making threats, crushing those who are non-compliant. This image shocks our understanding, changes when our vision of God shifts from a violent dictator to a kind and caring parent who loves all and wants the best for all. Now, the early church realized that they were experiencing a transformation in the way that humans experience and understand God in the world. For in Jesus, we see God as one who identifies, who serves, who suffers with creation, who would rather be tortured and killed than to torture or kill. The image of a violent commander sending us into the world to wage war is replaced by the image of a gentle and healing and reconciling and empowering spirit who descends on us like a dove. God is love. Love is at the very heart of God. And we need some way of talking about that. And it is confusing. But we need to be able to speak of the one we come from and the one we worship, shared in and through relationships with the very heart of God. Deep within the mystery of the being of God, there is community. So we claim that there is only one God, and yet there is relatedness at the heart of the universe. And it is this relatedness, this capacity for loving and for being in communion that is extended to us, so that we can share in the very communion that has always existed in the being of God. Because we are not monolithic individuals. We are not separate unto ourselves. We are created for community. And in our very mobile time, you have to be pretty intentional about finding family, about forming community, about finding those deep and honest relationships that enable your faith to grow and flourish. Seems that it may be harder than it has been in the past, and it seems to be easier to become more and more isolated. It's easy to remain anonymous, to live in isolation instead of tending to relationships and facing the complexities and the messiness of real community, because it's not easy. It's hard. It takes a little humility, a lot of humility. It takes a back and forth. It takes forgiving and asking for forgiveness and trying again. It's not easy. But the God of infinite space and time is also infinitely personal. God is moving in ourselves and in our souls. God is calling us to holiness and to wholeness, to freedom and to creativity. And God's Spirit is that deep reality that enables all of us to call upon God, to claim that freedom, that courage in the living of each and every day. So now we can see and we can claim that if God is social, we are social too. If we are created in the image and the likeness of this triune God, we are created to be in loving relationships. Now, unfortunately, too many people still believe that we are separate entities, that we are only individuals who are threatened by those who are different from us. And sadly, we have been trained often to see the world this way. I love the phrase that Sally McFaig used when she taught her students. I'm sure I've mentioned it a few times before. When she said, "Be careful what you believe, the world is like that." Be careful what you believe, for the world is like that for you. In many ways, our world becomes what we expect it to be. If we expect people to be hateful, that is what we see. If we expect conflict, that is often what we get. But we are hardwired for mutually affirming relationships. And when we enter into loving relationships, we not only find our truest and deepest selves, that is where we find God. If God is love, as we claim, as the scriptures tell us, then the purpose of human life is to participate in that love every day, to share that love with others. That's why when Jesus was asked about the greatest commandment, he says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself." You can't take them apart. They come together. We are finite, but we are connected to the infinite. And maybe that's too much to be aware of every day. We just might not get anything done for the awe and the wonder of it. But sometimes, some days, we need to slow down and let that infinite spirit flow over us and through us, calling us back to our true purpose. Part of being a church, a Trinitarian community, is to always be striving to be a place that knows that we don't have all the answers. We're seeking answers, but we don't know it all. To be a place that makes space for conversation. Being a part of the community of God includes valuing those who bring different voices and experiences into our midst and into the conversation. Valuing difference, being inclusive. These aren't easy, but genuine community, while challenging, is also creative and productive and enriching, and it is worth the effort. Now, today we talk about Trinity, and while we say this, we know that God is more than all of our metaphors, all of our words, all of our images, all of our ideas. But we still need them. We need ways to talk about our experience and our beliefs and what we are called to do and who we are called to be. So it matters how you imagine God to be. It matters what metaphors you use. Awfully angry or dancing with delight? Who is the God, the character of the one that you come from and you follow? Together, we claim that we are children of God, this loving Creator, this redeeming wisdom of Christ. and the empowering Spirit that dances into our hearts, burning away the fear that holds us back so that all that is left in us is compassion, abundant and overflowing. Jesus, praying for his followers, says, "My Father, I have made your name known to those who you gave me. As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world." This is the thing about this Trinitarian God, this communal creator. God is always calling from the center of the universe to those with a consciousness to respond. Will you join me? Will you go into the world with my love?